The tension inside the courtroom was more than just a mood. It was alive, buzzing, humming beneath every breath. Cameras weren't rolling, but if they were, the footage would have gone viral before the gavel even dropped. On one side of the room sat Judge Judy herself, Judith Sheindlin, the no-nonsense, razor-sharp queen of televised justice. Her robe was crisp, her gavel rested like a loaded weapon, and her glare could stop a heart mid-beat. And across from her was Denzel Washington. Not in a movie, not on a red carpet, but right there in a real-life legal clash that had every major outlet parked outside the building with vans, satellite dishes, and reporters trembling for crumbs of information. Denzel didn't look worried. He never did. But this time, there was something else behind his calm. Fire. He sat upright, still, his hands folded neatly in front of him. A navy blue blazer clung to his shoulders like armor. No legal pad, no nervous shifting. Just Denzel watching, waiting, breathing steady. And behind him, rows of spectators, Hollywood insiders, political analysts, and even former co-stars held their breath. Judge Judy narrowed her eyes. Her tone was flat, but each word fell like a stone. "Mr. Washington," she said, "I've reviewed the statements you made, statements that question not only our institutions, but this courtroom itself. You're a respected actor, but today you are a citizen. And in this courtroom, you don't get a script." A murmur rippled across the gallery. Some smirked. Some gasped. Denzel single quotes S. lawyer, a young woman named Cassidy Gray, opened her mouth to object, but Denzel gently placed his hand on her arm, signaling her to let it go. He stood slowly, every eye fixed on him. "Your Honor," he began, voice low, smooth like water over stone, "I didn't come here to perform. I came here because something happened. Something that shouldn't have." Judge Judy leaned back. "You can save the speeches, Mr. Washington. This court is interested in facts." "Then let's talk facts," he replied, not raising his voice, but making it echo. A man lost his job. A woman was silenced. A tape disappeared. And suddenly, "I'm the problem because I asked why." The courtroom held its breath. "Is it because I used my platform?" he asked. "Or because I used it to ask uncomfortable questions?" Outside, protesters gathered. Some held signs that read, "Justice for Cameron. Denzel speaks truth. No one is above the law." Inside, Judge Judy's expression hardened like concrete. "This isn't about your platform," she said. "It's about accountability." But Denzel didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He didn't bow. "Exactly," he said. "So let's talk about who's accountable." The story had begun months earlier with a viral video. A whistleblower named Cameron Fields, former studio tech, had leaked footage of a senator laughing over rewritten contracts that were meant to benefit his friends in private media. The footage made it to Denzel through a confidential source. He posted it. He stood by it. And then everything exploded. The senator denied everything. The network buried the story. And suddenly, all eyes turned to Denzel. He was accused of defamation, accused of tampering, accused of trying to destabilize public confidence. But people weren't buying it. Not after Cameron vanished, not after the leaked footage disappeared from every corner of the internet, and not after Denzel refused to retract his words, refused to play along. Today's hearing wasn't just about evidence. It was about silencing, about punishment, and about whether one man armed only with truth could stand against a system that wanted him erased. As Denzel sat down again, Cassidy leaned close. "We're being set up," she whispered. "They're going to try to humiliate you." He looked at her calmly. "They can try." Judge Judy rapped her gavel. "Enough with the theatrics. We're going to hear from the prosecution." And then the door opened. And in walked Senator Douglas Vance. A chill went through the gallery. The same man from the leaked tape. The same man who'd laughed about bending the rules. The same man who claimed the footage was fake. He was not expected to testify, but here he was, smiling faintly like he owned the room. "This is bad," Cassidy muttered. This wasn't on the docket. But Denzel leaned back. His eyes didn't blink. "It's about to get worse," he said, "for them." Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. "Senator Vance, you've been called as a surprise witness?" The prosecutor, Carl Benson, smooth-talking and smug-smiled. "Yes, Your Honor. Senator Vance has agreed to help us establish a timeline and clarify Mr. Washington's alleged interference with public information." "Clarify," Denzel whispered to Cassidy. "That's their word for rewrite." Vance took the stand. "I'm here as a public servant," he said with exaggerated modesty, "and to clear the air." The courtroom felt colder. "Mr. Washington," Judge Judy said, "do you have any objections to this testimony?" Denzel stood again. "I just have one question for the senator." Judge Judy hesitated. "This isn't cross-examination yet." "I only need one question," Denzel said. She gestured reluctantly. "Go ahead." Denzel turned to Vance. "Where's Cameron Fields?" You could hear a pin drop. Vance blinked. I don't know." "Are you sure?" Denzel asked. "Because the day after that video dropped, he went missing. And the last GPS ping on his phone was 3 blocks from your penthouse." The gallery gasped. Judge Judy snapped. "Mr. Washington, unless you have proof." "We do," Cassidy said, rising. "Cell tower data. Already submitted in our supplemental file." Judge Judy flipped through her binder and froze. Vance tried to smile, but it cracked at the edges. "Coincidence," he muttered. "I get deliveries there all the time." "Could have been a courier. He wasn't delivering anything," Denzel cut in. "He was running." Now even Judge Judy's expression faltered. "Your Honor," Cassidy said, voice rising with urgency, "this trial isn't about defamation. It's about exposure. Our client revealed something powerful people wanted buried. And instead of investigating them, we're dragging him through the mud." Judge Judy looked up slowly. "I will review the supplemental file. We will resume after recess." She slammed the gavel harder than before, but the air had already changed. Lines had been drawn, and for the first time, it wasn't clear who was on which side. Outside, news crews scrambled. Inside, Denzel sat back in silence. Cassidy leaned in. "They didn't expect that question." Denzel didn't smile. "That wasn't the real question," he said softly. "That's coming next." The silence that followed recess was louder than any argument. The tension wasn't just in the air, it was in the way the court officers stood, in the way the spectators whispered too softly, and in the way Judge Judy stared down at the binder, like it held something too dangerous to touch. Denzel Washington didn't speak. He didn't need to. The question he'd asked before recess had been a scalpel-clean, sharp, and deeply cutting. "Where is Cameron Fields?" Senator Vance had fumbled. But the deeper wound was in how the courtroom responded. Because when a man goes missing and no one with power wants to ask why, that's when silence becomes complicity. Cassidy sat beside Denzel, her fingers tight around a pen. "I pulled the rest of the cell records during the break," she whispered. "There's more, way more, and someone tried to wipe it." "Who?" Denzel asked, keeping his eyes forward. "Yes," she muttered. He already knew. It was never just one person. It was always a circle, a quiet group of decision-makers who didn't need to speak aloud to make things disappear. And if Cameron was one of the things they erased, Denzel knew they wouldn't stop with just him. Judge Judy tapped the file again. Then she spoke slowly, as if weighing each word. "The evidence presented in this file is troubling, and it warrants serious consideration. However," she added, looking directly at Denzel, "we are still here to determine whether your public accusations caused reputational and financial damage to Senator Vance." Denzel stood. "Your Honor," he said, with respect. "If a man exposes corruption And the only consequence is that the corrupted feel uncomfortable. What damage are we really talking about? The gallery murmured again. The judge raised her hand. Mr. Washington, this court doesn't care how popular your ideas are outside. This isn't a popularity contest. Neither is justice, he replied. Cameras would have loved that line. But inside the courtroom, it landed like thunder, raw, electric, real. The prosecutor, Carl Benson, stood and rolled his shoulders as if he were about to audition for the role of his life. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, he began turning to address the gallery. Even though it was not a jury trial, we are witnessing a performance. Mr. Washington is talented, charismatic, and no doubt a beloved figure. But that doesn't exempt him from the consequences of spreading disinformation. His video post accused Senator Vance of criminal conduct based on an unverified tape. He walked slowly, milking every second. What if it was fake? What if it was edited? What if the whistleblower was lying for clout? Mr. Washington didn't wait to find out. He broadcasted it to millions, and the result? Senator Vance's family received threats. His re-election campaign collapsed. His wife was hospitalized for stress-induced heart issues, and Cameron Fields conveniently vanished, just in time to make Mr. Washington look like a martyr. He turned and faced Denzel. But this isn't Hollywood, Benson said. This is real life. And in real life, reckless speech has consequences. He returned to his seat with a smug grin. Cassidy stood fiery now. So let me get this straight, she said. A sitting senator caught laughing over doctored media contracts, whose net worth doubled the same year the bills passed. He is the victim, but the man who asked why is the one on trial? Judge Judy sighed. I'm not interested in political theater. Then you might want to close the curtain, Cassidy said, because someone's pulling the strings behind it. A courier burst into the courtroom then, breathless. He whispered something to Cassidy. She unfolded the envelope and her eyes widened. Judge, she said, we've just received a sworn affidavit. From whom? Judy asked, irritated. Cassidy passed the paper forward. From former studio employee Rena Shaw. She was in charge of security logs the night Cameron Fields disappeared. Denzel leaned forward. Judge Judy scanned the paper. Her face went blank. Then she read aloud. Double quotes. On the night in question. At 9:14 p.m., Mr. Cameron Fields entered the building and swiped into elevator bay 6. I later received direct orders to erase that entry from the system. When I refused, I was demoted and placed on unpaid leave. I have nothing to gain by coming forward, but my conscience can't stay quiet. You could feel the walls shift. Even Senator Vance squirmed in his chair. His fingers tapped the wood table faster than before. Cassidy pressed forward. We have requested subpoena for all remaining security logs from that night. Judge Judy held up her hand. I'll allow it. But be warned, this court will not become a circus. It already is, Denzel muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. A few in the gallery chuckled. Others looked afraid, because what Denzel said wasn't sarcastic. It was just true. This courtroom, this hearing, this entire charade, it was a play dressed up as justice. But the next act was coming. And it would be brutal. Backstage in the courthouse's private conference room, Judge Judy removed her robe. She sat with a glass of water, staring out the window. One of her clerks entered quietly. There's something you should see, the clerk whispered. He placed a tablet on the table. A message blinked on screen, anonymous, encrypted, marked urgent. She hesitated, then pressed play. It was another video. Grainy, but real. Cameron Fields alive, standing in what looked like a motel room. His voice was raspy. Tired, if you're seeing this. They didn't get me yet. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. I didn't lie. I didn't fake anything. I just wanted to do the right thing. But the moment I gave that footage to Denzel, people started following me, watching me, threatening me. I'm not safe anymore. His eyes stared directly into the camera, and neither is he. The video cut off. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair. For the first time that day, she looked shaken. Back in the courtroom, the tension was no longer suspense. It was dread. Cassidy stood once more. Your Honor, we request immediate protective status for Mr. Washington. On what grounds? Judge Judy asked. Based on evidence that he is being watched, targeted, threatened, and that whistleblower Cameron Fields whose footage triggered. This entire case is still alive and running for his life. The room erupted. Judge Judy banged the gavel. Order. But she couldn't restore order, not anymore, because what started as a trial was now a storm. Outside, networks broadcasted updates non-stop. Inside, Denzel's expression remained calm. They're scared, he whispered. Cassidy nodded. Good, he said. They should be. By the time court resumed the next morning, the courthouse steps were flooded with reporters, protesters, activists, and bodyguards. Barriers had been set up. Drones hovered in the sky. Police presence doubled. What had started as a legal showdown had now ignited something bigger, something raw, untamed and unstoppable. Denzel Washington arrived in silence. No sunglasses, no entourage. Just Cassidy by his side. His face looked tired, but not afraid. The kind of tired you see in someone who's had enough of lies and is now prepared to tear them down brick by brick. Inside the courtroom, Judge Judy was already seated. Her robe still stiff, her hair still sharp, but something behind her eyes had shifted. She looked less like a judge commanding control, and more like a woman holding something heavy. Cassidy leaned toward Denzel and whispered, "We got word last night. 2 of our subpoenas were blocked by the Federal Archives Office." Denzel didn't react. "Let me guess, classified?" "No, just missing, of course." The judge cleared her throat and began. "Before we proceed," she said, "must inform the court of a video that was submitted anonymously to my office late last night. The content suggests that Mr. Cameron Fields may still be alive and in hiding. For his safety and pending verification, I will not release the footage publicly. However, I am now compelled to consider that the claims made by Mr. Washington were not baseless." Gasps filled the room. The prosecutor, Carl Benson, immediately stood. "Your Honor, I object this so-called footage could be deepfake manipulation, designed to sway opinion." "Then let's prove that," Judge Judy said sharply. "You and I both know this isn't the first time footage has vanished under suspicious circumstances." Benson froze. "Do you have something to say, Mr. Benson?" the judge asked. He hesitated. "Only that. We must tread carefully. Rumors can destroy reputations faster than the truth can catch up." Denzel spoke up. "Then let's give truth a head start." Benson turned to him. "You're not the hero here, Mr. Washington. You're reckless, unpredictable, dangerous. Only to people who have something to hide," Denzel replied. The courtroom fell into a brief, eerie silence. Then the doors creaked open. A woman walked in slowly, holding a worn-out folder against her chest. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Denzel. "Rena Shaw," she said, introducing herself. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. "You're the security analyst who submitted the affidavit?" "Yes, ma'am," Rena said, "but that wasn't all I had." She stepped forward and handed the folder to Cassidy, who opened it with shaking hands. "Are these the missing access logs?" Rena whispered. "And the backup tapes?" Cassidy's breath caught in her throat. "But they said the server crashed." "They made it crash," Rena replied. "I had a hidden copy." "Your Honor," Cassidy said, turning quickly, "I ask for immediate admission of this evidence into the record." "Approved," Judge Judy said without hesitation. Benson shot to his feet again. "You can't just—" "I can," Judy snapped, "and I will." Cassidy moved fast. She pulled the evidence to the display and keyed up the backup footage. Grainy video blinked on screen. The courtroom leaned in as it came into focus. 9:14 p.m. Cameron Fields enters the building. 9:17 p.m. He swipes into elevator bay 6. 9:19 p.m. A black sedan pulls into the underground garage. Senator Douglas Vance steps out, followed by two unknown men in suits. Gasps. 9:22 p.m. The security feed freezes. Cassidy turned. As you can see, the moment Vance enters the building, the feed suddenly glitches. But the time code confirms. The timeline. This was no coincidence. This was a cover-up. Benson was visibly sweating now. We don't know who those men were. We don't know what happened after that elevator door closed. But we know who was there, Denzel said, standing up. And we know someone wanted Cameron silenced. Then a voice came from the back of the courtroom. I can tell you what happened. Heads turned. An older man stepped forward, limping slightly. He wore a faded coat, a ball cap pulled low. Cassidy blinked. Sir? He pulled off the cap. Name's Darius Tate, he said. I used to drive for Senator Vance. But when I asked questions about that night, I was let go. He handed over his phone. I recorded a conversation. Didn't think I'd ever use it, but I can't sit on it no more. Cassidy tapped play. The courtroom speakers crackled. Then, he's just a tech kid, Doug. He doesn't have the reach. Reach? He gave that tape to Denzel Washington. That is reach. So what do? We make sure nobody ever sees him again. The entire courtroom stopped breathing. Benson tried to interrupt. This could have been fabricated, except it matches the voice prints, Cassidy said. Already verified. Judge Judy stared down at her bench, fingers tightening on the gavel. Then she stood. This hearing is suspended until further notice. Effective immediately. I am ordering a criminal investigation into the disappearance of Cameron Fields and potential obstruction of justice by sitting Senator Douglas Vance. Reporters exploded into a frenzy outside. Security rushed to Vance's table, but he was already gone. Vanished. Denzel stepped back. For the first time, a wave of emotion crossed his face. Relief? No doubt it was something deeper. Resolve. He looked over to Cassidy, who was blinking hard, fighting back tears. We're not done, he said. Not even close, she replied. Outside. The world had changed. Inside. Denzel Washington didn't smile, but he did whisper one thing under his breath. They tried to silence the truth. He looked straight ahead, but the truth just stood up. Night fell on the city like a curtain of smoke. Helicopters circled above rooftops. Sirens flashed in every direction. The courthouse had become more than a legal battleground. It had become a beacon, a symbol, a pressure point on the throat of a system that could no longer breathe quietly. And Denzel Washington had just pressed harder. After the explosive recording from Darius Tate, Senator Douglas Vance had fled. No press conference, no explanation, no statement. Just disappeared. And for 48 hours, the entire nation held its breath. Cable News ran split screens of Denzel on one side and Vance's last known location on the other. Headlines screamed, Actor versus the system, truth or revenge, and America's courtroom reckoning. But it wasn't about fame anymore. It wasn't even about politics. It was about whether power could erase a person and expect silence in return. Denzel sat inside a small safe room beneath the courthouse, surrounded by federal marshals. Cassidy stood near the monitor, arms crossed, exhaustion written across her face. They issued a warrant, she said, voice low. FBI wants Vance brought in by midnight, dead or alive. He's not dead, Denzel said calmly. How do you know? Because powerful men like Vance don't die in the dark. They negotiate. Cassidy stared at him. You think he's making a deal? I think he's buying time. Just then, an agent entered the room with a tablet in hand. We got movement, he said, pinned from a burner device. Guess who? He flipped the screen toward them. Vance. Live location, outside a private airfield 20 miles north. Cassidy's eyes went wide. "He's trying to leave the country." "Not yet," the agent said. "He just entered a black van, but it's not heading to the runway. It's circling, heading underground." "A bunker," Denzel muttered. "He's meeting someone." Cassidy turned to the marshal. "We need a raid team now." An hour later, federal agents surrounded the private facility. No warning. No sirens, just the hum of night vision scopes. And whispered commands. And inside, Douglas Vance sat across from a shadowed man in a three-piece suit. "The window's closing," Vance said. "I need immunity, protection, and full clearance to leave the country by dawn." The man lit a cigarette, his face never fully visible. "You went too loud, Doug," he said. "The Washington boy wasn't supposed to fight back." "Well, he did," Vance snapped. "And now we're all exposed." The man leaned in. "That's your mess. Clean it up." Just then, boom, the steel doors flew open. Flashbangs lit. The bunker like thunder, hands where we can see them. Vance dropped to the floor. The man in the suit vanished into shadows. A trapdoor. An escape plan. But they had Vance. He was dragged out into the cold night, eyes squinting against the flashlights. And he said nothing. The next morning, courtroom gallery seats were full before sunrise. Reporters, politicians, actors, former intelligence, operatives. Even some of Denzel's harshest critics sat silently, waiting. Judge Judy entered, robe tighter than before, eyes colder. "We resume proceedings today, not as a formality," she said, "but because the events of the last 24 hours demand full transparency." Cassidy stood first. "Your Honor, we now know that Senator Vance met with an unidentified individual in a private facility while attempting to flee. We request access to the security footage of that meeting." Benson, the prosecutor, was back, but now his voice was weaker, less confident. "Your Honor," he said, "if such a meeting occurred, it may fall under national security classification. Don't you dare," Denzel said suddenly. Everyone turned. He stood slowly. "Don't you dare tell the people that truth is too dangerous for them to hear." Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Washington, are you prepared to testify under oath regarding your involvement?" He nodded. "I am." Cassidy placed her hand on his arm. "You don't have to. Not yet." "I want to," Denzel said. "I'm done watching." He took the stand, and for the next 45 minutes, he told everything. How Cameron Fields came to him, how he sat for hours debating whether to share the footage, how he was warned multiple times by unnamed advisors to stay out of it, how his family received threats, how studios began canceling meetings, how one producer told him, "You're too dangerous now. You're radioactive." "But I didn't stop," he said, looking directly at Judge Judy. "Because the truth didn't stop being true." Her fingers tightened around the gavel. "And what do you want now, Mr. Washington?" she asked. "Justice," he said. "For yourself?" "For everyone they thought they could silence." The judge paused. Then she turned to the court clerk. "Issue a formal order," she said. "This case is no longer civil. We are now transferring this matter to the federal criminal court for charges of conspiracy, obstruction, and attempted witness suppression." The courtroom erupted. Outside, streets filled with cheers, shouts, and tears. Inside, Denzel stepped down from the stand. Cassidy grabbed his arm. "We just changed the whole system." He looked at her quietly. "No," he said. "We just reminded it what it's supposed to be." But somewhere far away, in a dark office lined with monitors and encrypted phones, the man from the bunker watched in silence. He picked up a phone. "Washington's still standing," he said coldly. "I want him down." The voice on the other end was quiet. "Then you'll have to break him." The man exhaled slowly. "Fine." He stared at a picture on his screen. Denzel outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters, speaking truth to a broken machine. And he whispered, Let's see how far he's willing to go. 3 days later, the story was everywhere. But not the version Denzel wanted. Overnight, a mysterious clip began spreading online. Grainy audio, partial video. It was heavily edited, but the voice was unmistakably his. I don't care if the system burns. They made their bed. Maybe we push harder. Cassidy's phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from sponsors, newsrooms, studios. Even a warning from her own law board. They're framing you, she said, voice breaking. As she rushed into the holding suite at the courthouse. They're calling it a confession, a call to violence. They've cut up your words, Denzel. He didn't even look surprised, just tired. Who leaked it? He asked calmly. No trace yet, she replied. But it was timed perfectly. The morning before the criminal hearing. They're trying to poison the jury pool. He nodded slowly. And it's working, she added bitterly. Outside, headlines screamed. Denzel's dark side? Was this about justice or revenge? Judge Judy faces pressure to recuse herself after secret meeting with whistleblower. They're pulling strings everywhere. Cassidy whispered, "You've rattled something too big." But Denzel shook his head. Not too big. Just too scared. Meanwhile, inside a luxury tower miles from the courthouse, the man from the shadows known only as Mr. Calder watched. Multiple screens light up with Denzel's distorted voice. "Let the world doubt him," he said coldly. His assistant frowned. "What if it backfires? Then we leak more," Calder replied. "Dig deeper. Everyone has a weak point." His eyes lingered on a photo Denzel with his father, taken years ago. "What about family?" he asked quietly. "Any living relatives?" The assistant hesitated. "A brother, estranged, small business owner, off the grid for years." Calder leaned forward. "Not anymore." Back in the courthouse, Judge Judy faced pressure from above. Sealed memos, veiled threats, private calls from former colleagues and political figures. Some urged her to drop the case. Others warned her to avoid becoming another activist judge. But the footage from Cameron Fields haunted her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, trembling, terrified, honest. And she remembered what Denzel had said. Truth doesn't need a script. So when court resumed, she stood tall. Despite efforts to discredit this case, she said into the microphone, "We move forward, because this courtroom is not governed by fear." She turned to the room. "Today we hear from the whistleblower himself." Cassidy nearly dropped her pen. "Wait, what?" Judge Judy nodded. "He's here." The doors opened. Cameron Fields walked in. Alive, pale, thinner, but walking. Every step a declaration that he wasn't erased after all. The room gasped. Denzel stood slowly. His eyes met Cameron's, and for a brief second, the entire courtroom disappeared. It was just two men. One who risked everything to tell the truth, and one who refused to let it die. "Mr. Fields," Judge Judy said softly, "are you prepared to testify?" Cameron nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Cassidy whispered, "This changes everything." But in the shadows, literally, in the hallway just outside the courtroom, a reporter in a trench coat received a file, anonymous, thick, stamped confidential. He opened it. And froze. That night, a primetime special aired across all major networks. A journalist sat in front of the camera, holding the file. "We have received exclusive documents," he began, "allegedly from a former intelligence contractor. They claim Denzel Washington's involvement in this case was not spontaneous, but strategic." The report cut to scan pages. Emails, phone records. One message dated 3 months before the first leak. "We can use Washington if he agrees. If not, we pivot." The broadcast exploded online. Trending hashtags included #Denzel planted, #scripted justice, #actor or asset Cassidy threw her phone across the room. They're turning everything inside out. Denzel stared at the screen, calm again. How do you stay this quiet? She demanded. Because they're not attacking me, he said. They're attacking the idea of what I did. And what is that? Refusing to sit down. The next morning, Cameron Fields took the stand. He spoke for an hour about the footage, the threats, the men in suits. The night he disappeared. And then he pointed to someone in the gallery. He helped me, he said. A man in a janitor uniform stood up. He pulled off his cap. FBI. We placed Cameron under protection when we realized how high this went, the agent said. But even then, some of our own turned against us. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. Are you telling this court there was a conspiracy within your agency? Yes, ma'am, he said. And it goes all the way up. Cassidy whispered too. Denzel, if that's true, this case isn't the end. It's the beginning of something much darker. He nodded. And more dangerous, she added. Good, Denzel replied softly. Because the more they reveal, the less they can hide. Outside the courthouse, a protest grew louder. Hundreds of people gathered. Signs lifted skyward. Truth can't be silenced. We stand with Denzel, but also, what is real anymore? The world was no longer watching from the sidelines. They were inside it, now confused, electrified, divided. And in that chaos, Judge Judy struck the gavel once more. We resume tomorrow, she said. But mark my words, we will finish what we started. In a hotel room far from the chaos. Calder watched the broadcast of Cameron's return. He turned to his assistant. Pull the last card, he said. The assistant blinked. What card? Calder leaned forward. His brother. The morning of the final hearing, there was no sunrise. Just clouds. Thick, gray, and heavy, like the city itself was holding its breath. Armed security swarmed the courthouse entrance. Media vans jammed every street corner. Inside, the walls felt thinner, as if even the building knew something irreversible was about to happen. Denzel Washington arrived without a coat, shoulders squared, eyes tired but steady. He didn't speak to reporters, he didn't wave, he just walked. Every step a quiet act of war. Cassidy met him at the doors. You're not going to like this, she said. Try me. She handed him a note, anonymous, no return address. A single sentence. Your brother is in the courtroom. Denzel froze. Cassidy explained quickly. We verified it. Someone brought him in this morning. He hasn't said anything. He's just sitting, watching. After all these years, Denzel whispered. Why now? Calder's playing his last card. Inside, the atmosphere was radioactive. Cameron Fields sat on the witness bench, flanked by federal protection. Judge Judy looked older than she had the day before, like the weight of every decision had pressed into her skin overnight. The press benches overflowed with sketch artists, journalists, and high-ranking government observers. Cassidy stood and addressed the court. Today, Your Honor, we present our final witness, a name found in the recently declassified contact log belonging to Senator Douglas Vance. The doors opened again. A man in a tailored coat entered. He was calm, unnaturally. So state your name, the clerk said. Peter Calder, he replied. Denzel's jaw tightened. Cassidy stepped forward. You are the man seen speaking with Senator Vance in the bunker before his arrest, correct? Yes. You helped him disappear? Yes. You knew about Cameron Fields' disappearance? I orchestrated it. Gasps, and you admit. This, on record? I do, Calder said flatly. Because I want the record to know why, Cassidy frowned. Go ahead. He turned toward the judge. Because truth is only dangerous when it threatens comfort. And Mr. Washington threatened the whole damn country's comfort. That's not your decision to make, Cassidy snapped, isn't it? Calder asked. We built the story. We built the heroes. And we allowed people like him to rise until they thought they didn't need permission anymore. Cassidy looked stunned. You're confessing to a conspiracy just to deliver a speech? No, Calder replied. I'm lighting a match. In the back row, a man rose slowly. Thick jacket, worn boots, unshaven. His eyes locked with Denzel's. Cassidy turned. Is that? Yeah, Denzel said quietly. Do you want me to have him removed? No, Denzel stood. Your Honor, he said. May I approach the gallery? Judge Judy hesitated. This is unusual. So is everything about this case. She nodded. And for the first time in legal history, a defendant walked away from the bench and into the crowd. He stopped in front of his brother. Marcus, he said. The man didn't speak. You came here for a reason, Denzel continued. What was it? Marcus looked around the room. Cameras, agents, eyes burning into his skin. Then he spoke. They said you were becoming dangerous. That you were going to bring us all down with you. Denzel waited. But I watched, and what I saw wasn't dangerous. It was honest. Painful, yeah, but honest. The courtroom didn't blink. And for what it's worth, Marcus said, I'm proud of you. Denzel nodded. Thank you. He turned and walked back to the bench. Calder smiled faintly. Touching. But Judge Judy had heard enough. Mr. Calder, your arrogance is staggering, she said. You believe justice is a performance. That truth is a tool, but this courtroom disagrees. She picked up the gavel. I hereby refer all matters for federal prosecution. This includes Senator Douglas Vance, Mr. Peter Calder, and all related actors and intermediaries involved in obstruction, conspiracy, and tampering with judicial process. She turned to Denzel. As for Mr. Washington, this court finds that your actions, while controversial, were not only justified, but courageous. The gallery erupted. People rose to their feet. Applause thundered through marble. Outside, the crowd chanted, Denzel! Denzel! Cassidy hugged him, tearfully. You did it. No, he said, we did. Judge Judy stood once more. This court is adjourned. Bang. Months later, a documentary aired titled Truth on Trial. It featured testimony, footage, the full unedited clip of Denzel's so-called confession. And at the end, Denzel sat alone on a rooftop overlooking the city. He looked into the camera. They tried to silence a man, he said. But what they forgot was, men die, truth doesn't. He stood and walked toward the edge of the frame. Fade to black.